here today. This is the Where's My Male Protagonist channel. We're going to be discussing creating fantasy adventures not centered on men. I am your moderator today, Ginny Loveday. You can find me on all of the social medias at Ginny Loveday. If you can't remember the @ sign, you can just type my name into Google, and there is my entire life story there. But enough about me. We have a panel today full of really qualified, lovely humans who are here to talk about this story, or these stories rather, and let them tell you about themselves. Jess, you sat next to me, so you gotta go first. What do you do?
My name's Jessica Marcum. My pronouns are she, her. I design games, I stream games, I write video games, and yeah, I'm a social worker too. That's pretty much what I do.
My name is Ashcraft. I am the co-owner and president of a small independent TTRPG company called Pick Up and Go Games. I am also one half of the streaming duo that primarily focuses on video games and collecting at conventions called Geeks Unplugged. And I have been working and writing for about 25 plus years. I started in live action and moved on when we developed our TTRPG company, and I'm currently working on trying to learn how to stream, getting there, and I'm also part of the Old Ways podcast Actual Play Group.
Much better intro.
There's more about this.
Happy is working.
She didn't tell you her entire life story. There's more on the handout. Last but certainly not least.
My name is Elisa Teague. I am a freelance game designer, both board games, card games, and TTRPGs. I'm also a puzzle creator and a woman.
Yes.
I don't know. If you don't know me, I've written for Dungeons and Dragons. I wrote the puzzle chapter of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I wrote the Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, and Power Rangers RPGs. I just recently worked on the Marvel Multiverse RPG, the adventure book that's coming out next month. I'm currently doing the Adventure Time RPG and other fun things.
And the current reigning queen of the Baron Munchausen.
I am reigning king.
Reigning king, sorry.
Of Baron Munchausen's Baron's Ball, apparently.
Yeah.
So our icebreaker for today, now that we've gotten the awkwardness out of the way.
Oh no, the awkwardness continues.
We're all up here, so the awkwardness shall continue whether you want it or not. Is audience question poll. Is who, show of hands here, knows at least one designer that does not identify as male? This is an easy one for you because there are several of them present in the room. Who knows more than 5? All right, more than 10. Claire, you're just going to hold your hand up. All right, more than 20. All right, see, the hands are getting progressively less and less, and that is part of the problem, honestly. A huge part of it. But let's get into something a little bit more fun here. Some of the topics that we're going to discuss today are women creators and why you don't know them, which we discovered that actually. Some common tropes that diminish the female characters that you are putting in your game, or your feminine-presenting characters that may not use she, her pronouns. World building to make an accepting world that women and other people want to play in. Some popular NPCs, memorable characters, and sensitive topics. Maybe how to handle those or whatnot. Or we're going to try our best to address as many of these as possible. This is a panel where we want to talk to you, we want to hear from you, so we'll do our best. All right, fun bit here. We have a bunch of popular NPCs from D&D things. You all don't have to look, because I was going to ask you if you can name any of them and see if they're up here.
Once they're stressed.
Yeah, but Elisa, can you name
You took mine.
And I wrote it on the book.
That is, yeah. Can you name a popular, well-known, easily recognized visually female NPC?
For D&D?
From D&D.
Tiamat.
Yeah.
Tiamat's up there.
I mean, I said Tasha right off the bat. But
Tasha's up there.
Yeah.
Wolf.
Wolf is up there.
Umberly.
Man, Umberly is not up there, and I feel bad about myself now.
Here's the one that I butcher all the time because I literally, for some some reason cannot say her name, even though it's literally the topic of a game I'm actively playing right now. Mushroom.
Oh, the mushroom lady. That's a big one too. Not up there.
Golden Moon.
Yeah, Gold Moon is up there. So
you should hear when I'm actually playing in the game, and I have to like recall like an address, and Chris Lindsay just like laughs at me. He's our DM, and cannot say it for some reason.
Zuchtmoy.
Between playing and running and Call of
It can
Cthulhu.
be literally written right in front of me. Cannot say it.
It's okay, you can't read it from looking at how it's written.
So do you want to?
it has too many consonants.
Too many.
On the flip side of that, we named some that, again, obviously I couldn't think of off the bat when I was making this. So back to the problem of the perception there. We do have some others here. You seem to be anxious to tell me who some of these people are. Or you're raising your hand for some reason.
Oh, I was just I don't think anybody mentioned Zarael on the upper right there.
On the upper right. My upper right?
Well, from my perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you've got Esmeralda.
We got Esmeralda in the far corner, Gold Moon below. Tasha here, Zariel on the top, the Lady of Pain. Tiamat, that is Laryl Silverhand, Wolf, and that is Vajra, the Black Staff. One of my more esoteric references there, because it's a little bit more modern.
But also not many.
But also not many, not many.
I can name 21 evil goddesses for you.
And how many
But
strong?
all evil.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, evil isn't necessarily bad.
No.
They have their reasons.
But why they gotta be?
Evil can be
But on the flip side, as everyone's looking at my visual reference here, I had to jam those men on the page. We're just layering them one on top of the other. There are so many, and there were way more that I had to choose which ones to put up here. Easily recognized NPCs. I did, however, put one on there that visually stumped Alan momentarily. Alan Patrick there. So here in the bottom kind of middle, crouching down menacingly. Does anybody know who that is?
Is that Martin Kanan?
No, Morgan is the baldy up top.
Minsk and Boo are there.
Minsk and Boo are there.
And I see my voice drop.
There's crouching right there. That is Big B.
Oh,
Okay. Big B.
Man with the hand.
Big B, the sinister man with a plan, apparently. But yeah, we have plenty of other ones there. Asmodeus, Vecna, Mordenkainen, Orcus, Drizzt, yeah, Van Richten, Raceland,
Jarlaxle up there.
Jarlaxle is up there, Minsk and Boo, Lord Soth, Strahd himself, of course, Elminster, and I feel like I skipped over someone named Zanzibar. Boo also does count as male. Minsk and Boo are two separate male characters. They're both on there. But so that was a lot easier to name those, and I had way more. But again, you get that, there's too many, right? Why aren't there more women? He says recognize. All right, man, that has gone all off the edge of it. So that's fine. I can link everyone to this if they want, but it's just a really, really large graph that doesn't fit on the slide regardless. That talks about tropes which disempower women. So I'm going to actually just pass it to our panelists here because I haven't been speaking too long. And let's talk about some tropes that you see, what's problematic about them, and how we can avoid them through the discussion. So whoever wants to start, you can just start with a trope.
I'll start with some easy ones.
Yeah.
And the really super common ones. In fact, some of these were mentioned in panels that I kind of tried to keep my mouth shut about because I knew I was going to be talking this one. And I also didn't want to be, contrary to the people talking. But just this weekend, the busty woman bartender.
Oh yeah, that's good one.
Always behind the bar. The kidnapped princess.
Sexy land.
That needs to be saved.
A fun thing that I mentioned I can name 21 evil goddesses, and it's because I was a producer for Uncaged Goddesses. And when we first put that together, we were looking at, okay, what are all of the goddesses in D&D lore? And did a breakdown and looking at good and evil goddesses. So your gods, the male deities, are pretty much anything. female deities are by far. Good aligned deities are hearth, home, fertility. Evil deities, trickery and death. So that's pretty much what it is. We're here for childbearing and nurturing, and we're also here to seduce you and kill you.
And then when you talk hero, like hero level or prominent female, they seem to tend to fall into one of two areas. One is either you have the very stoic, grounded, intelligent, but trying to keep everybody in line. That the mom level, or the nag, who is kind of keeping the party in line and together, and never really allowing themselves to. They're never really having fun. They're just kind of there to kind of keep everything in line and maybe provide support. And then on the other hand, you have the women who are the emotional ones, who maybe the barbarians or the ones with fighter who want to have fun and really live life, but they are portrayed more as being that hysterical type woman or the emotional woman, and therefore can be dismissed much more easily and not taken seriously because they are very vivacious and bold.
Yeah. That makes me think of a lot of, it was really dominant in 90s cartoons in particular, but if you look at like the common 5-man band structure, you would have your leader, your sassy guy, your smart guy, your strong guy, and the girl. Yeah. And that was her personality, was girl.
Yeah. I mean, even with the classic, what is it, the Circle of 8? There's Tasha. I mean,
she's the girl.
And you have the girl. So, yeah.
And even then, like you said, getting into trickery, Tasha has the two forms because she's trying to deceive you clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly. It's not that she just enjoys magic, being a powerful woman.
Yeah, we wanted to divide goddesses into domains because they're all level 17 to 20 adventures, and we're doing this by level wouldn't be silly. And all of them have trickery or death. So we had to what other domains do they have? So we can have a war section and a storm section, but all of them, trickery and or death.
And you have a lot of female protagonists tend to be either support. If you look at the dynamic of the group, they tend to be more in a support role, even if they are more towards the prominent front. There's still the support for whatever the lead is, which is generally a man, or
the reaction girl.
Right, or the reaction girl, or they're the ones that need to be fixed. There's something going on. There's something about them that needs to be fixed or redeemed or changed within the course of the story.
Or all of the above. Wow, I haven't blanked on character.
Black Widow.
Yes, Black Widow. Thank you. Pose.
Yeah.
Which is again reductive.
Yeah. Also made me think of Jack in Mass Effect. He's broken, but if you're a male shepherd and you date her, you can fix her.
Well, that's a lot of tropes that are really easy when there. As you can see, the list of potential tropes, and this is only some of you could think of, expands widely beyond the bounds of this graph. As a matter of fact, I can fill 4 of this page. And there's any number of ways that we can diminish the character. However, at the top there is a very easy flowchart there on how to determine if you actually have a strong female character. Can she carry her own story?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she should be able to do that. Is she 3-dimensional? Yes, she should be able to do that. Does she represent an idea? If she does, you've gotten in trouble now. Now we need our person. No, she should be her own thing. Does she have flaws? Those are actually generally present in a real woman.
No matter what.
In one that exists in real life, actual woman. Being one myself, I'm flawed. And then last but not least, is she killed before the 3rd act? She does need typically to survive. By that point, you may finally a strong female character. That was not that many steps to get through.
But still.
And still.
I think the big thing is like, does she have friends or family that you know of?
Yes, three-dimensional there.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
is
does
she
she-
like a fully formed person? Like, so I mean, when you're designing your characters, your protagonist or your antagonist, because there's no reason why your strong female character can't be either one. What are some things that you like actively like try to spotlight to make sure people know that this is a real thing? This is not a throwaway character. This is not, you know, our foil for the bad guys.
So it was interesting when I was thinking about what topics you would possibly bring up during this panel, and I was like, you know, thinking about how this panel was going to go, and because it is a designing female protagonist for gaming, like, well, when I'm designing an adventure and I'm designing a game, honestly, the heroes in the game are the players.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking to myself, well, the players are designing those characters, but you still need your NPCs that are in the game. And so, yes, I do tend to put in a lot of women, but they are most often antagonists, because that's the challenge that I have my player characters, my heroes coming up against. And so I had to really think about when I designed women that are characters in my games that are not antagonists. And I went through a few of my adventures that I've written in the past that have had them. And yes, I have gone through these steps even without even seeing this. They all have backstories because, of course, I want my real adventures to have steps to get through. I'm a puzzle designer, so I always have things where you need to learn as your characters. You need to learn the story. So yes, they have full backstories. They have families, just in case anybody ever asks me. It's all pre-planned. They have their own motivations. They have a reason for being in the place that they're in, even if they are that busty bartender which I don't do, but when they are, if I was to write something like that, they would have, why do they work there? What is their family structure like? Why is it that they're not off doing something else? Do they need this to support, you know, friends or family or whatever it is? Where do they live in town? Who else do they know? These are all things that are like real things about people, and that's how I think you should build things. That's how I build.
The busty bartender doesn't live behind the bar.
You know, maybe there's like a little bed under there. I mean, what else is she good for? I don't know. Like, I mean, that's the thing. I've played in so many games. I've sat down and played in so many games where that is the thing, and it's just like.
And she's the only woman.
Yeah, usually. Or somebody has been taken, needs to be rescued, or there's a meek, you know, little girl, you know, young woman that needs to, you know, that doesn't really have the answers to anything, but just gives a clue, but doesn't really know what's going on. Like, that's it. That's what we get, unfortunately, in most of what's out there now. That's what we need to change.
Are there anything to add from your point of view when you're designing those points that you really want to hit that hammer home that, like, this is an important character, we don't need to be dismissing her, or?
Well, one of the great things that, you know, with Elise, with the character building, I mean, as a game master, having the more information you have to work with, the fuller that character is going to be. And when you have that information, now whatever interactions your party members are going to have with that character, female, male, whatever, there's going to be a lot more that as a GM to work with, and a lot more for the players to be able to take in. It's so easy, yes, to throw out just two-dimensional tropes, but when you truly are world building, being able to have those stories, especially for even those minor characters, really kind of enhances the world, and it makes it a much more full, fuller world for that for the players to experience.
I like to put into my adventures because, yes, I absolutely agree with making your main antagonist and you want them to be fully fleshed out. But I like to put in what I call the DM's helper NPC, and that's usually a pickpocket, sometimes like a kid who works at the stables, and that's the person who, they've got a goal, they've got somewhere to live, they've got a family, but they're the one who, like, if the players have missed something really important, they're the one who knows everybody in town. They can always find the players, and they're the ones who might run into the players wherever, because they're either where the players' mounts are or they're trying to rob them. And they can be like, oh hey, thing is happening over there. And they're the ones who I'm like, yeah, usually they want to be an adventurer or something, so they're drawn to the players, and that's my little sneaky tool to get help for the DM, and also just to have like someone who isn't the busty bartender. And if I have a busty bartender, she and her wife run the bar together.
I like adding characters that are not, when the party actually digs in just a little bit, like scratches the surface. They're not exactly who you would expect them to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the smart guard that maybe knows a lot more than you would give them credit for, or the busty wench behind the bar who maybe has lived in the area her whole life and actually has knowledge of whatever's going on in the swamp, better than maybe the clerics or the guards that you expect would have that information. You know, the more you give them and you kind of put a twist on it, the more interesting those characters are, and it expands the options for the players when they go out, you know, just talking to gather information or are planning their next steps.
What you're saying, like, it actually made me think, question myself. I'm like, oh, aside from like maybe ladies of Waterdeep, when have any of you played in an adventure and you've gone to go talk to the mayor of the city or whoever is in charge, and it has been a woman, not like that? Yeah? Well, that's good. I'm glad you see it. But generally speaking, I'm like trying to, and I think that I sort of do that type of thing too, and now I'm going to re-question it. It's a systemic thing. I think that, you know, it gets ingrained in you. You watch so much media, you grow up with fantasy things, or not even fantasy things, just anything that you consume your whole life, and this is just kind of how the tropes that you do build in your own head. I pump up the same stuff, but I now will reclaim those things.
As a writer, I have found, especially one of the scenarios I'm currently working on, I actually delayed because I really wanted to go back and rework to give the protagonist, because she is female, a much more authentic voice and feel considering the circumstances in the adventure. And one of the things I find when I'm writing, especially for female characters or female identifying characters, is, am I falling into those tropes even as a female writer? Am I with my own, you know, the messages I've grown up with and the imagery and the stereotypes, am I falling into that? And I take the time to, as I write, you know, just kind of get it out and then go back and review it through that lens and see, am I, you know, like you said, you know, when you write a town, do you have a male identifying mayor? You know, do you ever think of a female identity or otherwise? And okay, maybe I need to change this or I need to modify that. And you want it to be accessible and authentic for those who would read it or run it. But there's also, you know, you also have to kind of fight against the idea of, if I am as true to this character as that voice that's coming through is, how is it going to be received? So then you have to kind of fight against that. You know, you have to be able to stand behind that character. Sometimes that can be tough because that voice may not be as widely accepted as others. But if that's what the voice is, then standing behind it is important for that representation.
Back to the point that Elisa made there about like your female characters that are leading. The one that you encountered, two of you raised your hand. Were they based on a popular pop culture character, as far as you can tell?
What I was actually going to say was kind of a caveat to my answer is that I've almost only found them either in homebrew material written by a female GM or a published module that had at least one female identifying person as an individual author or the author team.
That's why I'm coming to Connor next.
Yeah, and the women's whole is a Tom Speaker and a powerful leader of her people. And the Duchess of Daggerford is not based on a pop culture character either, but she is a very strong woman who figures prominently in the adventure First Straw.
And then, of course, Connor and I did design an adventure where we put a very strong female leader in it, who was modeled after one of our favorite pop culture icons,
Captain Janeway.
Captain Janeway. You got your hand up.
I do. So you talked a lot about the tropes that we want to avoid. Do you have a specific example of a strong female character that an emerging author or storyteller can look at for specific inspiration?
Stop doing my prompts for me. Anyway, that was the
Accidental, I
segue
promise.
there. Who are those good characters that inspire us? Yeah, exactly.
So my personal hero, and then I'm not going to turn this all into this. My personal hero happens to be a trope I hate. My personal hero, my very favorite female presenting character of all time is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but it is a trope, a terrible trope.
She's the action girl.
Yeah, exactly, like, oh, the chosen one, magical powers, but I think the reason why she breaks my hatred for that trope so much is because she is so multidimensional. She has so much backstory and friendships and support groups and flaws up the gazoo, right? And so for that reason, I do look at her as like something that I would model after, but avoid that whole, the magical girl thing or the chosen one thing. Like, those are things that I think, unfortunately, people just jump straight to when they think strong character.
She's not the action girlfriend though, because she doesn't revolve around her relationships.
Oh, I said action girl as in like she's a lot of times, and I see this a lot with male writers, but they hear strong female character and think like a female character who can kick your ass, and that's not what a strong.
That's not strong.
That is one definition of the word strong.
She's also strong here and here now, so.
Yeah, so the physical strength is part of it, but it has to be, again, going back to the 3 dimensions, strong up here. Is she intelligent? Is she making, with her choices? Is she good at strategy, along those lines? Is she strong here? Heart and soul, compassion, loyalty, friendship, things like that, that in some areas could be considered weaknesses are actually a great amount of strength, especially I think for female characters. And then of course the strength, physical strength.
So I have my other one, not to like cut back in, but my other one that isn't, chosen one magical, whatever, is Leslie Knope. Right? So like Leslie Knope would be my ideal, like here's somebody that you can model out if you've not seen Parks and Rec, whatever.
She's full of flaws.
And she's amazing and such an amazing, strong, wonderful character that is so well written in so many ways, and that is who I would say, like, you want somebody that feels real, this is her, right?
She is authentically herself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the most important aspects, especially when you're writing any character, but especially female presenting characters or non-binary characters, right? To give authenticity to that voice and to stand behind that. If they are, this is who they are. What you see is what you get, and even with all the dimensions of that character, if that is, it comes through. When it's authentic, it comes through and it reaches the reader or the player.
You got your hand up still in the air. You should hold it up in the air.
Sorry. With your comment about the 3-dimensional strong aspects of the female character, is there the risk of a slippery slope that the female character having heart and soul, having empathy, is that they become the designated empathetic one because traditionally male protagonists are not supposed to have that trait?
That's definitely an option that you can go down, which negates a lot of the other things. We're depending on her, right?
Yeah, it can play, I think, into that trope. It depends on how you have the connecting characters interact and react to when that part of that strength and that part of the personality comes out. How do you have them interact based on that? If you have the surrounding characters acting or coming across as negative, even on that subtle kind of undercurrent, it's going to not play well. If you have them react in such a way where it is natural and it's accepting and even supported, then I think that comes across as, okay, this is just part of who they are, this is part of their makeup, this is part of their strength, and this is a group that sees that, accepts that, it's part of that dynamic, and just move on, and I think it comes across better.
I think the way to break away from that line of thinking is actually to turn your question on its head and say, why is it that we are, pre-programmed to believe that male characters should not have empathy?
Yeah.
Like, why is it that it always falls on the woman to be the one to have the empathy? Why aren't we writing more male characters with empathy so we can break all of the stereotypes from the top down?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, one of my favorite examples of that is if you've seen Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. It's in anime, but there's several female characters in it who are very intelligent and are very empathic and empathetic and have like strong relationships. But the heart of the show is Al, who's basically a little boy that got turned into a robot, and he's half robots, yeah. But he's like the nurturer for everybody, and there's a lot of people who are really empathetic on that show.
He feels so deeply, like anyone around him. I think that's an excellent one.
But I haven't watched it, but is it a child?
Yes, of course.
So that breaks it already, because
Yeah.
children can have the empathy. Male children can have the empathy in many stories, but it's very rare when you see, heroic male presenting characters.
There is a really empathetic male presenting character in that who's a father, and he dies pretty early on.
And then on the flip side, there's the father who does the unmentionable things to his children.
Those kids, yeah. He gets to live.
He does.
Longer, at least.
And then when those the adult male presenting characters do go into that and show that empathy, they show that compassion and the emotion, how are those surrounding characters, how are they accepting of this? Are they supportive of this? Or are they presenting a message of, well, this character is just weak, there has to be that dynamic so that whatever comes across is shown as, yes, this is normal, it's okay. Men can cry, men can have emotion, men can be compassionate, men can be nurturers, men can have, these characters can have that, and it's almost normalized within that dynamic.
And truly, great segue. All of this here is kind of the foundation of any world building that you're going to have, where the world is created as a welcoming world that does empower women while not, stepping down on all of the men in the world. It's very much an equal world there. We want to start with making the men empathetic, and then we want to put things in there that are realistic. So where do we go when we're designing worlds where we want everyone to open the book and be like, ah, yes, I belong here? This isn't even, these are worlds that are welcoming the women, but I think we've already touched on like a great spot to start, is that we don't want any one gender to have like a prescribed role.
Yeah.
And I know personally, and O'Connor will have the same opinion here, that we want to start with looking at our town and having, realistic demographics of a mixture of type of people. And we want to turn a lot of things on their head. Like, there's a bakery. The bakery is run by this super young dude. And by gosh, he loves baking. It is soothing, it is whatever. Like, flipping tropes is a great spot to start. Where do we go from there? tropes flipped on their head. We started with that.
Oh God. Well, I mentioned this in another panel, but one thing I love that Chan Evans did in an adventure was put in a roll table for NPCs. That was like, and these weren't the main NPCs, but just the filler NPCs. That was like, you're in a location, here's like roll a D10 for their gender and another D10 for what activity they're engaged in. And it specified like, if you roll 1 to 4, they're male, 5 to 8, they're female, and then 9 and 10, they're non-binary. And that kind of thing, and it worked really well. I thought, I don't remember if that was exactly what it was, but it prescribed like activities for specific locations, and I thought that was a pretty nifty way to do it.
And I may be thinking, I may be mixing it up, but if I recall too, there was also a, how did they feel about having that role? So like, it could be like the overjoyed barista or the begrudgingly grumpy, but you're doing it barista. And like,
That might have been a different thing, but I do like
yeah,
that.
I like that too, because again, their suitability to the role is again not tied to gender and how much they enjoy being in that role. Like, that gives them dimension as well.
Right.
Why are they?
It's a lot of jumping off point for creative backstory, because when we roll the die, if they're begrudgingly doing the role, well, why? Why are they doing this? What is some backstory you can build in there? And it's great for world building as well. I really like that.
They're begrudgingly doing it because it was their father's dream that they did it, and they have not yet realized that they are their own person. And now we're going to get into the adventure of how they do that.
Right. And what you really want at your table, and as most of you probably know, is for it to be playable. Like, I feel like we get into a lot of books that look very pretty, but if for every single NPC you've written like a 2-page backstory, that's not functional at a table. That's like a nice book for you to read. So what you want are, even though it looks kind of ugly, like bullet points and little charts of things that like, yeah, I can find this person, okay, what do they love, what do they hate, what do they want, and what will get them to kick me out of the room, kind of thing. And then that's all you need.
Yeah, we want to prompt for those backstories for characters that aren't essential, but they still need to be able to have it.
Yeah.
when I do locations, like when I'm writing for any type of IP, not just like D&D or fantasy stuff, but any IPs that I'm doing, I always write up whatever the location is, the location description, major landmarks, and then underneath it I do bullet pointed. These are various NPCs you will find in this location. And I always make sure that I have a widespread of different demographically representative people, and not always people, but things and people that you can find in the area. And I try my very hardest, at least, to make sure that it runs a span of anybody that you can find with it. Lots of different kinds of people, but I always do the bullet point. Well, basically, adventure hooks of their own, but just like NPC hooks.
So for our game world, when we were designing our primary world of Schleria, one of the things we actually, my partners and I, we actually took a page from what we grew up with in the early 80s, the encyclopedias. So you remember how they were laid out? So you would have the land, and then you'd break down to various demographics and psychographics and geographic points, and then the type, people and everything. And we actually do that per land. And so all these lands are, because not every land is different. You go from one country to another part of the world. And that would give us an idea, and then from there we could expound upon if there were specific geographic points, if there were notable people in the world, and we could base it off of how we were designing that land, because not every, some are elf heavy, you have your dwarven, you have the orcs and whatnot. And one of the things we've really tried, especially as we've been writing modules, especially the ones of the last few years when we write pre-gens, we have tried to open them up. So the great thing about fantasy names is that the fantasy names can apply to whatever gender, whether you want to, female identifying, male identifying, I cannot talk, it's Sunday. Non-binary, wherever the span is. And what we've started to do is we've just removed any link to gender. So our pre-gens are no longer gender-based. because a backstory can apply to a character. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to that gender. And that way, when the players get a hold of, they choose whatever pre-gens they're playing, if they want to play, they can then build on that. How do you see this character? We've given you a name, we've given you your stats, we've given you a little bit of like, here's where you're from and this is what you've been doing, but now you build it out. How do you see this character? What's authentic for you as this character? And that's, we found, allowed it to be much more accessible.
That's so cool, especially because I'm just thinking of how many times I've gone to a convention that had pre-gens, and it's usually like 4 male pre-gens and 1 female pre-gen, and I just get handed the female pre-gen, because they're like, here, you'll want to be the girl.
Wow, I do not do pre-gens that way at all. I always, if I put a name on there at all, I always put like a gender neutral type of fantasy name, and always leave it blank, like under gender, I always leave it blank, and I let everybody just choose, because what's the difference? It doesn't.
I mean, that's how I do them.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's not in a very long time. I've not had that.
I don't
Well,
know.
I'm experiencing board games a lot, and that is also changing. I know this is primarily centered on RPGs and stuff, but like I am a board game designer as well, and so growing up, we've all had the board game that comes in that you pass out the characters or the little cards, and it's it's always a 6-player game, and you do have 5 girls presenting one and the girl, but that has been changing a lot. Now they're doing double printed boards where you can flip and different character art on either side, or no character art at all, or everybody is non-binary or whatever. When I was the art director, I've been trying to talk as fast as I can so I don't take over. But I was the art director on a game called Apocrypha Adventure Card Game, and we actually had a selection. I think it ended up being 14 player characters you could choose from. And I made sure, when we were designing the game and art directing the game, that those 14 characters ran a span of all genders, including 2 non-binary characters, and all ages, from young child all the way up. We had like an image of 80-something-year-old woman, and races as well. I mean, as many as we could possibly present in a non-specific way, so that everybody could feel as best as we could possibly represent, that they could choose a character and that they would represent them. And that's so important to do.
Dead of Winter is also really fantastic, though. I'm just thinking of board games with like how many options they have. And I know that was like really important to their team.
Alright, so our last kind of topic here, we want to switch a little bit gears to talk a little bit more about yourself. Sorry. I was going to talk about, what is it like being a woman in the creative space here? Like, what are the expectations that are put upon your, just inherently there, because you are the woman in the room. Hopefully no longer the only sole woman in the room. So people expect you to manage the house, right?
Just personality-wise, my own general, I stepped into the organizational management side of business. That was just me naturally.
But to do it, that makes sense.
but I like doing it. It helps me keep things organized. As a neurodivergent ADHD type, I desperately crave and also loathe any kind of organization. But for me, it was just a natural progression to jump in and be able to do that. So it wasn't. I didn't feel like it was really thrust upon me per se. There is a kind of a level of expectation to kind of pick up the slack. So I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I am a designer, I'm a business owner. I wear a lot of hats, and there are times when I actually feel a little bit resentful because I am expected to do all the home, a lot of the home stuff as well as a lot of the business stuff and everything else. But I also know that this is what I love, and if I want to continue to do what I love, sometimes you just have to deal with the suck and just go with it. But I also have begun to make sure that I have my boundaries, and something that's been very hard, but I am learning how to do it, is to ask for help and to delegate, because you feel as a woman that these are the expectations upon you, and you should just do them and keep your mouth shut. And when you don't speak up, nothing changes.
You feel like you need to do it all and you're not being
Yeah.
as competent.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes it's just a matter of you speak up. You might get some negativity back, but you just have to, nothing's gonna change if you don't. So you do. And it's working a little bit better these days.
My thought just left my brain.
Yes,
please.
Yeah,
I was like, I had two at once, and they just
I
exploded.
don't do women in gaming panels anymore. This is a different sort of panel, and this question skirts that line a little bit, but I will go into a little bit of it. Just because I don't want to say how bad everything is.
It doesn't have to be your personal experience out of it. You can, once you've experienced from others.
Sure. No, well, when I first started in the industry, it was nearly 23 years ago, and when I do know, like my very first Gen Con working professionally, I did notice very early on, not attendees, but setting up the booths. It's very apparent to see who is working at every company, and I was one of very few women in the hall. Like people off the top of my head that I could just remember, like myself, Margaret Weiss, Nicole Lindrews, that's about it, Kristen Looney. But like honestly, like we were it, and so it is very different now, and it has gotten so much better. So I don't want to say, oh, it's all bad. And a lot of the things that I think in my early career I was subjected to, which was taking on rules that were traditionally rules that women take on in businesses, that were thrust upon because nobody else wanted to do it, even going and getting a coffee and getting whatever, like all of those things. Those were things that were true, but I am very lucky, and I built a career for myself where I don't take that shit anymore, right? Like I don't, and I think that my professionalism and my capabilities have outshone like those types of things. However, I still to this day will have an idea or a method of doing something, a new type of spreadsheet, a new type of outline that I will present as being effective, and it will still be questioned until a man approves it in almost every case, and it is infuriating, but it's getting there, but it still happens. And I've done a lot of work in this industry. I shouldn't feel like this, where I have to be questioned and then verified by a man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the demographic has changed in its visual representation, and what I mean by that is when I was introduced to TTRPGs. I mean, I'm a geek and gamer from way back, but I was first introduced to TTRPGs in the mid to late 80s. 92 was my first Gen Con, and at that point we're talking 23,000 roughly people. And when I walked in as a gamer in my own right, yes, I came with friends. I had my boyfriend at the time, who was our local game master for our group. But when I walked in and I would sit down at a game without any of them to game, it was, they looked at me like I had 3 heads and I was a complete anomaly. When they realized I wasn't just there to hang out with, for my boyfriend, that I was there as a gamer, and yes, I actually knew the system. So looking back from, say, 92, when it was like 1 woman to every, 100 guys or something, that it seemed to be the thing, and to now, when you see the incredible diversity, women in their own right, not just, in the industry, but actually coming to games, playing in games, being open as, yes, I'm a gamer, I'm a geek, I love all this stuff, this is my fandom. But especially for those who are now coming out as creators, yes, we would see Margaret Weiss, we'd see Elisa. I mean, we had these amazing women who stepped up into the spotlight and said, I'm a woman and I'm here and I'm doing this and I love this. And then the rest of us would go, ooh, there's somebody there that we see. That representation is huge.
But I think it was only you as women that did, because I would have the experience of being in the booth and somebody would come up and say, oh, can somebody explain this game to me, and I'm like, oh, I can explain the game. Like, no, I need somebody who actually knows the rules. I'm like, well, I'm a director in the company, and also I designed this, right? Like, like what else? Being not seen as a booth babe, there to like draw you in to purchase things, and actually as, you know, a living, breathing, thinking person that actually enjoys games and loves it is like a new thing. So I'm glad you guys saw us.
Yeah,
I don't know if everybody did,
but it helps. But having that representation and having, you know, from the last 20, 30 years, and having these women come forward in their own right, not having their work co-opted or published under a male-sounding name, or having published under,
or not having your name on it at all.
Not having your name on it at all, or worse, having your stuff stolen and then published, you know, under somebody else's name, you know, generally a man. Being able to have that representation of women in their own right has helped spawn and allowed the rest of us who have come up through it to be able to say, I'm going to step forward and do this. And I've had to, even in my own little company, and still working on getting my credit, because honestly, for the longest time, I thought whatever I was doing wasn't legit. Yeah, it wasn't worthy. It was just whatever I was doing, and then somebody else would, you know, were the publishers, somebody else were the creators, and I didn't give it any weight until I really started looking at everything and said, why am I doing this to myself? I am defeating everything I've done for 20 plus years. And so starting to fight and get that credit, it's like, yes, you know, it's there. And it's because I have been inspired. I have, you know, having this representation. It's, if people do not step up into the spotlight and fight to get that representation and get that credit and get, you know, be there and say, I am here, I am me, this is what I do. Nothing, you know, again, nothing changes. So that is huge, and it just keeps getting better.
And I just want to give you a chance to answer.
Yep,
and then we
just talking so much.
I came into the industry as a creator about 5-6 years ago, and I was very lucky to have a very strong group of women, basically non-men, who were very connected and supportive, and I know I was lucky to have that, and that really helped my career at the beginning. But you can't always work with the same people all of the time, and when I'm in that kind of supportive environment, it's absolutely wonderful. But I've still been on projects where you're very excited to work with a big name, and yet you see that big name sexually harass somebody in a Discord that you're working on, and they won't stop until a man on the project is like, hey, stop, you know? And I still have the experience where I'm in a game store where my games are being sold, and if somebody asks me, like, or they ask, hey, can somebody talk to me about RPGs? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this kind of thing. They're like, no, I want to talk to, like, they don't say I want to talk to a man, but it's implied with the exact same thing. And I can be like, no, see that? Like, I wrote that and that and that. Like, you have my games here in this store. Like, I can help you. But you're not taken seriously. I usually go to cons with my partner, who's male, and this year was the first year, I think, that people addressed me first, and I don't know if that's just because I'm finally known enough, but usually people would go to him and be like, oh, you must be a creator, and is this your arm candy kind of thing, and he was always like, no, I'm hers.
All right, great. I will say on that one too, it has been interesting and great and hilarious to me, going from, Alan, it's so good to see you, and this is your person, Jenny? Ginny, we're so excited to see you, and your boy is here too. So, you know, he's valid and wonderful and awesome and deserves his own accolades, but those, again, separate. But it is nice to see that, like, you know, we are now starting to be thought of, like, first and foremost, what do you do, not who are you here with and what do they do.
Yeah.
But on that note of all our highly talented creators, what's more, Who are you? Where can people find you later? And what do you want them to check out that you're working on now? Since we've all got something.
Jessica Marcum. You can find me on Twitter and Bluesky as Unseelie Jess, on Twitch at Angry Nerd Girl, and you can buy one of the few remaining first edition copies of Oops All Draculas at the IGDN booth downstairs.
He doesn't look cute, very.
You'll find most of my stuff, pickupandgo.games. We're downstairs in booth 25. You can pick it up right now.
You go.
And pick up and go, yeah.
Can't do her
So yeah, I am the riddle master for Pick Up and Go games. So there's that. Geeks Unplugged continues. So you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on most of the medias. I do not do Twitter.
I didn't see the Twitter on there.
Yep, I do not do Twitter. But currently, the most recent project is our zero-level adventure, Danger in the Deep, which I'm thrilled with. I really love what we did with that one. And I hopefully by GaryCon will have our high-level adventure, Shadows Our Tower, out, which it definitely deals right in with what it's like to be a woman and dealing within a male-dominated industry. So we'll see what happens.
I'm Elisa Teague. You can find me on Bluesky and Elisa Teague, because I actually got it early enough. And I'm not on Twitter as much as I used to be for many reasons. But you can still find me there and send me questions or whatever at Geeky Pinups and Instagram. I do answer DMs over there as well. Or on Facebook, my public account is the Elisa Teague. Right now, which I have failed to mention this entire convention, so, well, now that's being recorded, but there's an active Kickstarter going on for a project I'm working on, which is the Shivers pop-up board game that I'm writing adventures for, and it's in its last couple of days, so it's really beautiful and amazing with a pop-up book with mystery clues all embedded in it. It's awesome, so go check that out. And then next in November, The World of Amaria, the Legacy of Mana stuff that I've been playing on stage here at the show. It has a new Kickstarter that's coming that I'm writing adventures for. And in February, the beginning of February, the Adventure Time RPG that I am producing and writing on will be there. And yeah, that's the current stuff. Oh, Cataclysm of Kane, Marvel Multiverse. Matt, tell me if I don't say this, is coming out next month, like in a couple weeks.
Yes, that is. All right, and you can find me at Ginny Loveday on all of the things. I've been running Animal Adventures here, which is not the most recent thing at all. It was the first hardcover that I published, but you can find 8 million things now with my name on them. Team Forge Games, my day job. Thanks all. Other people.